Hello, and welcome to the Remote Work Movement podcast. My name is Gonçalo Hall, and this week's guest is Heron, Executive Director of Tulsa Remote. Tulsa Remote is a unique talent recruitment initiative of the George Kaiser Family Foundation, which has seen nearly 20,000 applications from over 150 countries in all the 50 states of the United States. We spoke about the Tulsa Remote program for remote workers that promises $10,000 to the selected remote workers who decide to move to the city and work from there. If you are asking yourself what are the results of this initiative, what have they learned, can other cities actually replicate their model, this podcast is definitely for you. This is about the future of the cities and how more cities will start fighting to attract remote workers to repopulate and create a local community. I am really excited about this episode because I am following Tulsa Remote since they launched back in 2017, and they are one of my favorite role models to what it will look like in the future of the cities. Please welcome the incredible Heron. Aaron, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you today.
I'm super excited to talk with you because I had so many tips about how great you are and how good you are doing in Tulsa in the US. Can you tell us before a little bit about yourself and what you are doing?
Sure. My name is Aaron Bolzle. I'm the executive director of a program called Tulsa Remote, which is an initiative of George Kaiser Family Foundation, a nearly $4 billion foundation based here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Their mission is to make sure that Tulsa is the best place for a child to be born, grow, and succeed. And Tulsa Remote adds to that mission by helping diversify quickly the industry opportunities that exist here in Tulsa, by attracting talented individuals who have the flexibility to work from wherever to come and work in Tulsa for a year.
And that is amazing. That caught my attention because where everyone is competing and trying to figure out how to attract people to small cities, here you are thriving, everybody's speaking about Tulsa, and that is truly outstanding. When I opened the Tulsa Remote website, there was the first phrase that really caught my attention. And it says, hi remote workers, we'll pay you to work from Tulsa. You are going to love it here. This is an amazing sentence, and I think it caught everybody's attention. And I have a lot of questions about this. The first one is exactly why is Tulsa a great place for remote workers?
That's a great question. So I'm from Tulsa originally. I grew up here, but I left for around 15 years, and I lived in Boston, New York, San Francisco, and spent a lot of time in Los Angeles. And when I was in San Francisco and in New York, many of my friends talked about what city they were going to move to next. There was kind of a general acceptance that their time in that major city was finite, and that they would have to consider the next city that they would live in, potentially when they started to raise a family, or after the drain of living in that major city got too much. And it seemed like everybody had the same list of cities that they were considering: the Portlands, the Denvers, the Austins, and the Nashvilles, and all wonderful cities. But I really believed that Tulsa deserved to be on that list of cities that people were considering. The thing that makes it such a great city is, well, first off, the leaders of Tulsa, both civic and foundational, have been working diligently over the last 10 or 15 years to make it a thriving, vibrant community, the type of place that the worker of today and tomorrow would be really excited to call home. We have a thriving arts district. We have an amazing arena. We have a great live music scene. We have a thriving food scene. We have an amazing brewery and coffee scene. It's really pretty amazing. I keep on using the word amazing because it is pretty amazing. We also have the largest private gift in history to a city, which is the Gathering Place, which is a $465 million park that was gifted to the city in September of 2018. And I can spend an enormous amount of time describing it, but it's one of those things that you have to see to fully understand. And every single time I bring somebody to that park, they immediately get what's happening here in Tulsa and get really excited about it. So you combine all of that with a lower cost of living, and the ability to kind of have a higher quality of life because of that lower cost of living. And you've got a really great combination for remote workers.
Nice. I was looking into reviews because now you are running the program for almost 1 year and a half, a little bit, just eating the 1 year and a half mark. And I found some reviews about the program, and actually all the reviews I found, and there were some of them, they all mentioned the arts. But I can read one from Elizabeth Saunders that moved to Tulsa 1 year ago. You know her, good. And she tells to this article that the airport is efficient, which is important for me as a frequent traveler, as almost all remote workers. I am charmed by the arts district. As you mentioned, art is always present. And I found some of my favorite hangout spots, including Centennial Park that you mentioned, which boasts a lake, and Sheimera Cafe, which makes great Thai cafes. So it looks like she's very happy because there is a lot of art around. There is places to go outside. People are keeping mentioning this in every reviews I read. And I was questioning myself, and you answered a little bit. Was Tulsa always this interesting before? But before it just struggled to show up because there are just too many good cities in the United States, too many big cities making a great marketing to attract people? Or was this also a little bit part of the remote Tulsa program to make the city more interesting and to even attract more people living there?
So that the answer to that question is multi-level. So the first is that I like to say that history is long and memory is short. So Tulsa was at one point called the most beautiful city in America. At one time, our airport was the busiest airport in the world.
Wow.
Glenpool, which is a city just south of Tulsa, was the largest oil reserve found in history. And that helped create the city of Tulsa. So we had some of the highest skyscrapers in the world, the highest skyscrapers west of the Mississippi River. We have more Art Deco in downtown than most any other city. There is a rich art history that comes from those oil men that came from the coast to Tulsa. So we have a top 15 ballet in the world. We have an amazing symphony. We have two incredible museums, Philbrook and Gilcrease. We have the largest collection of Native American art outside of the government. There's all of these things that have made Tulsa, historically a pretty amazing city. But we declined for decades. And we saw the talented people who were being raised in Tulsa leave for other areas. We went through a period where Tulsa wasn't that shining star that it always had been. And so what I think is really interesting about the story of Tulsa Remote and the other initiatives that are happening here in the city is that it's not brand new to Tulsa. It's just the next chapter of Tulsa. And it is a concerted effort. So it's not part of the Tulsa Remote strategy, but Tulsa Remote is only possible because of the overarching efforts of those leaders who came before this program.
Nice. And were any actions taken in the last, let's say, 3 to 5 years that actually made the city more interesting and helping you now as Tulsa Remote to attract more people?
There are. So not only is the focus on the arts district and that's created such a thriving bar and restaurant scene and art scene, but there are conversations that are happening in Tulsa, which I think really attract talented people. There's an opportunity for your voice to be part of the change that's happening within the community. So, I talk about Tulsa's history, and not all of it is great. Like many cities across the world and across America, we have dark pasts that we're working through. And I think what's really amazing about Tulsa is that these conversations are happening today in a community that you probably wouldn't expect. And there's a real opportunity to add your voice to it, like I said. And I think that really helps. I honestly don't think anybody is looking for a utopia. They're looking for a place where they feel like their energy can be used to affect positive change. And I personally believe that because of its point in its life cycle and because of the size of the city, Tulsa is a perfect destination for people who want to be a part of that.
That was also a common feedback I got from all the interviews I read, was that people were happy because in the big cities they felt they were anonymous and they couldn't make an impact, and people are just creating things in Tulsa, even to give back what you are doing. And that for me is super interesting because it's a smaller community. You can have a bigger impact with anything you build. And that is a great thing about living in smaller cities.
I completely agree with you. And our strategy about this project, and I believe what's made it so successful, was it's not really about the $10,000.
True.
We hear $10,000 to move to Tulsa, but if you're a family moving from the coasts, $10,000 is going to cover the cost of moving.
Exactly.
Uh, what it really does is we put together a program that removes the risk that comes with trying a new city. And what I think all of those positive feedbacks are coming from is the sense of community and belonging that we're trying to create. My overarching thesis is that there is a benefit to a city providing that sense of community and belonging that used to be provided through other mechanisms that don't exist anymore. I was living in San Francisco, and the minute that I quit my job and started working remotely, I lost my community because the vast majority of my community came from the day-to-day in the office.
Yes, I strongly believe that will happen in the future as we start working more and more remotely. We don't need to be in the big cities because most of the people moved out from the smaller cities to the big cities just to get the job.
And I don't think it's hyperbole to say that remote work has the potential, if we're conscientious about it, to solve the vast majority of issues that we have. Environmental issues, 150,000 people commute from Sacramento to the Bay Area every day.
Yeah, I saw people doing a 4-hour trip in the bus provided by the companies, and they have to wake up at 2 in the morning to go to work. That is insane.
I don't understand how anybody could think that is quality of life.
No, it's not.
And
Yeah.
so if you and that's speaking from somebody who was on those buses. I worked for Apple in Silicon Valley and lived in San Francisco and went to Cupertino every day. And after a certain amount of time, it wasn't 4 hours, but after a certain amount of time, it became incredibly draining.
For sure.
So it has the potential to solve a lot of the environmental issues. It also has a lot of potential to solve social issues, the ability for families to stay closer to each other, the ability for people to build community, and the ability to be truly inclusive, to accept individuals who potentially don't fit into the traditional model of working in an office. So it also has the ability to fix political divides. I mean, our country in the U.S. seems to be very divided, and it seems geographically divided a lot of the times. And there's opportunities to solve those issues with that.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see remote work as the biggest change since the Industrial Revolution. That's why I'm also working so hard to push it forward, because I think this can really move the world in the right direction. You know this, and Tulsa Remote knows this, and because of that, you decided to create a program, Tulsa Remote, that is offering the $10,000 that you mentioned. But it's not only about the money, right? What else are you offering to remote workers thinking about moving to Tulsa?
So we went through the mindset of a remote worker who's looking for a new community and tried to answer every question that might come up. So the $10,000 is meant to remove burden and risk. There is cost associated to moving. But the real questions come once you make a move. Where am I going to live? We partnered with property management groups to help provide additional incentives for people looking for apartments. And we partnered with real estate companies who can help identify neighborhoods more easily so that people who want to buy can buy. We've actually had over 30% of the people who moved in the first year have purchased a home at this point.
Wow.
So it's amazing the level of commitment that people are making. But then it's also, where do we work? So we partnered with our nonprofit co-working space here in town called 36 Degrees North, and each participant gets a membership to that co-working space. But I'm not stopping there. I'm working with that co-working space company, that 36 Degrees North, to develop what I'm calling the first remote first co-working space, really understanding the obstacles that come for remote workers that co-working spaces don't normally pay attention to create a space that's much more conducive to them. We also provide community development opportunities. The biggest problem with moving to a new city is, how am I going to meet people, and are they going to be accepting of me? So we have events on a regular basis that help the individuals that come through our program accomplish three things. The first being a sense of belonging and community within Tulsa Remote. The second being connection to other locals and the city as a whole. And the third, an opportunity to provide, to give back or exposure to organizations that need support. Because we really believe that part of that community is having purpose as well, and an opportunity to really provide a pathway to give back that really gives the people a feeling of community. So we try to remove risk, and then we also try to provide pathways for people to feel a sense of community. And I believe so far it's been working really well.
Remote work is for several times accused in the good or bad way of people being lonely and inside their homes, and this is already happening in where people live and where people are used to live also, but this can be even exaggerated or can be even worse when people move to a new setup, to a new city, to a new place. And that is great what you are doing with community. How can you do you have any follow-up with the people that move to Tulsa to make sure that they are being integrated? How do you operate in the first, let's say, 3 to 4 months of people moving to Tulsa? How did that look like for in their sides?
Sure. There are a lot of different ways that we stay connected to the individuals. First of all, we leverage technology. There are multiple different community. We use a Slack group for all the participants. We also leverage Facebook for those people who use Facebook. But then we have monthly dinners where we all get together and connect, and we get updates about the program. And we also uh, sometimes bring in people to discuss different aspects of Tulsa. So this next week, we're actually doing that dinner at the ballet company here in town,
No.
which is going to be an amazing opportunity for the participants to see practice of an upcoming ballet, and also learn more about how they can support Tulsa Ballet, which again is an incredible organization here that's world renowned. So we do that, but then we also have events throughout the month that we either sponsor or support. So there are organizations in Tulsa that are creating events from, Carnival's tonight. Today is Fat Tuesday. So there are events here in Tulsa that we are letting them know about. We send a newsletter out to give them updates about all the events that are happening. And then on top of all of that, I have a few team members on my team that actively reach out to the participants, grab coffee with them, make sure that they're getting connected. Sometimes individuals that come through the program get connected really quickly, and they really don't need a lot of support from us. Other people need a little bit more support. And again, our team has a mantra that we provide support through connection, not service. So what we do is we connect with those individuals, find out what they need, and then try to work to connect them to the resources of the other individuals that they need to feel that community.
Nice. Do you do it on purpose that people feel that they are part of the program, not only by moving there, but also as an active voice inside the program? So if there is something that they want to give you feedback and they think you could improve, do they people feel the ownership to do it with you?
I mean, I definitely
I
believe
you hope so.
I definitely believe that's the case. I get a lot of feedback, and uh, you know, it's always a balance for me between, I don't want Tulsa Remote to be the reason people stay in Tulsa. I want it to be the reason people tried Tulsa, but I want Tulsa to be the reason that they stay. With that said, Tulsa Remote is sustainable outside of the program because what it's doing is it's attracting highly diverse, talented individuals from all across the country and all over the world to Tulsa, which is developing the kind of ecosystem that other talented people want to be a part of. I lived in Boston, New York, San Francisco, all extraordinarily diverse and inclusive communities. And Tulsa, while it's diverse, it hasn't always been intentionally inclusive. And there, on top of all the other efforts that I've talked about, there are a lot of concerted efforts to ensure that Tulsa is far more inclusive than it has been historically. That, tied with bringing all of these individuals together, creates a self-sustaining ecosystem that these people don't even need to be part of the program to continue to benefit from it.
That is amazing. I'm just smiling because what you guys are doing is everything I believe is the future, and it's just like awesome to see what you guys are doing. I think I'm your fan already. Good. That's true. Like I don't to say this lightly. It's like what you are doing is truly amazing, and I want more cities and more places to do the same, in a good way, of course. I want to go a little bit to the roots because it's always interesting to see how everything started, right? How did this idea started in the beginning, maybe 3 years ago, 4 years ago, about this idea about attracting remote workers when everybody else was trying to fight for the next office of Amazon? You were actually trying to attract remote workers, which 3 years ago, although the community was big, it was not a big thing. Now it's exploding everywhere. So how was the ideation and the initial process from the idea to the beginning of the implementation?
Well, what's really fun, first of all, is that Tulsa Remote is fully funded by George Kaiser Family Foundation, and being funded by a foundation like GKFF allows us to move quickly and be extremely nimble and respond to uh, the real time feedback that we get. So I initially started consulting with George Kaiser Family Foundation in August of 2018. And there had been conversations happening within the foundation about how to expose Tulsa and all the amazing things that were happening here to a larger audience. How do we get people to try it out and to move here? Again, because representation is so important within the community. You know, my career, this career that I had, which has been really wonderful, was born out of privilege. The privilege to go to school in Boston, the privilege to take an unpaid internship that turned into a job, the privilege to take all of those risks. And now that I come back to Tulsa, I provide a pathway and connection to all of those experiences and those other connections that I have in those other countries. So, or in those other cities. So if I come back and then I bring a bunch of other people back, that creates this ecosystem that supports all the children in Tulsa who potentially don't have the same privilege to go out there. It provides hope even if they don't have the funds to leave. So there's efforts for a long time within George Kaiser Family Foundation or conversations about how to do that. And I think that one of my colleagues saw that Vermont was planning on reimbursing individuals that moved into the state up to $5,000 a year for 2 years to have a home office, and thought, well, yes, that's great, but what if we were to do something a little different? What if we were actually to create a program that helped them move to Tulsa, and it was just cash? And then, that program evolved into what we have today, which was really digging into what are the obstacles that somebody has. Because I try to avoid the transactional aspect of just giving money, because if you focus on the transactional, then the relationship is over once the transaction is done. If you really focus on community, which is what we're all looking for,
Yeah.
then that's something that can last forever and can continue to grow and be additive. Once the money runs out, hopefully the community is at the point where it starts exponentially growing.
Yes, and I think it's ironic that when everybody is accusing remote work of because of the loneliness aspect of it, that is actually remote work that is helping us to integrate better in communities, and it's helping us to be a more active part of the communities because we do have more time. And if I live in a smaller city, I do want to be part of the change. And it's for me just ironic how it really works and how it goes so straight against the expectations of most people and the ideas that most people have about remote work.
I think that it's just like anything else. When you're in the infancy of a new era, there are growing pains and there are transitions. And one thing that I have discovered running this program is that people who work remotely are more social and better at communicating than the average person that I know, because they have to.
Yes.
They have to. Their job is dependent on their ability to communicate effectively, and they are social. And I think that people also believe that remote workers are individuals who are excited about moving to a new city every month and just traveling the world and not really connecting. And I don't believe that that's true. I think that there are periods in life where people want to go and explore. But at a certain point, everybody wants to connect and have a sense of belonging and a pathway to give back. So one thing that I'm really excited about is, as the evolution of remote work happens, how can we have destinations where those individuals who want to get connected quickly and be in a community of other individuals that understand their obstacles? How can we create those destinations? Because what's really great about Tulsa Remote is that none of these individuals work for the same company, but they have a sense of camaraderie because they have to deal with the same types of obstacles. Even if they're in widely different industries, they still have to deal with the same time differences and distributed teams and technology issues, everything that you can imagine.
Yes, that is truly outstanding. So you took, if I understood correctly, from the idea to the implementation, it was less than 1 year. Is that correct?
That is totally correct.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
What were the biggest challenges? Because you moved really fast, really quickly. You were everywhere when you launched the program. You were all over the news. You were really well received by everyone. What were the biggest challenges that you faced during the first 3 months of implementation?
The biggest challenges were with the amount of exposure that we had, growing in a way that supported the community as well as we possibly could. We thought maybe we'd get 1,000 applications in the first year. And we thought we'd probably bring in 20 or 25 people in the first year just to test it out. And we really didn't know what the caliber of the individual was going to be. I think we beat out 1,000 applications by the time I woke up. It was a late night the night before launching, and I woke up probably around 7 o'clock in the morning, and it was I was getting emails with every single application because, again, I had no idea what volume would be like. And so I look at my phone and there are nearly 1,000 emails. Your heart jumps a little bit. So when we started digging into the applications, we received over 10,000 applications in less than 10 weeks. And I actually shut down the application because we were still getting 125 applications a day when I shut it down. I shut it down because we needed to dig in and really identify who we were going to bring on. And we couldn't do that when we were continuing to get more and more applications. When we started to dig in and see the caliber of person who was applying, there were a lot of quick conversations that happened about how do we expand this? What's the right size? We could have accepted a few thousand people in the first year, but how would we be able to commit to those individuals that we would provide them the experience that we had promised? And how can we assure the city of Tulsa that this influx will be a positive without displacement issues, without creating subcultures? So we decided to expand it to 100, and I'm really grateful that we did, because I believe that was the right size. It was manageable. I mean, it was a lot of work, but it was manageable. I've been able to build relationships with each person that came through. And at the same time, it was large enough to really show a positive impact in a really quick way. I think the citizens of Tulsa, especially in downtown and the surrounding areas, can all speak to the positive impact that the program has had in a very short period of time.
How many people have you helped move to Tulsa so far?
Including partners and family, we've had 115 in the first year. We launched the second year of Tulsa Remote in October, and we have, since January, we have helped 20 participants move in, and I don't know how many of those have partners yet, just off the top of my head.
Whoa.
But far more than 20 just in the first month and a half.
Nice. And what was the feedback from the locals about the program? So these locals are now feeling that you guys are paying people to move in. I'm sure you got a lot of questions. At least we do all the time in Portugal. What about the people here? How can we get something of this? How can we win with everything that you are doing? So what was your feedback from the local community, and how did you dealt with the non-sayers, with the people that were kind of against the program for X reason?
I believe that the locals were kind of split into two different groups when we first launched and got the amount of exposure. First of all, people were really excited that we were getting as much exposure. And then there was a group of individuals that thought, well, why are you giving money to individuals who don't live here when you could provide that money to people who are here? And I won't speak for the foundation, but the amount of money that they spend on Tulsa Remote is a fraction of the money that they spend on other initiatives that are completely focused on Tulsa. It's all private dollars. Uh, on top of that, everything that we're doing is to create an ecosystem that provides more opportunity for the citizens of Tulsa. So it was an opportunity for me to have conversations with those individuals to explain that by bringing in talented individuals that work for remote companies, they're bringing with them connections to companies that are actively hiring remote workers, which means that individuals in Tulsa get to stay in Tulsa and potentially work for major companies that they never considered working for. It also means that those major companies have to set up tax rules for the state of Oklahoma that they potentially hadn't set up before, which means that the HR teams now have the freedom to recruit other individuals within the entire state, not just Tulsa. So, it's also, you talked about Amazon HQ2 earlier, and I think that the average incentive package, which was taxpayer dollars, I think the average was about $48,000 per employee. And you'll have to check me on that, but I believe that was about the average,
Yeah.
which is not an uncommon average for recruitment projects. So if our project is successful by bringing in the talented people that everybody wants, then it's the most efficient economic development program that I'm aware of. On top of it, these individuals are adding to the community. It's not taking away any tax dollars, and we're providing what they've been missing, which is a sense of belonging. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
Nice. And what changes have you seen in the city since these people start to move in, since the remote workers start to move in? So it was 1.5 years ago. It was not that long ago. Have you seen some changes in the city, maybe new businesses? I know there is a very good, I was checking all the co-working spaces in Tulsa. I was checking there is a second co-working space that looks amazing as well. I also partner with the Work From, and I see that there is several good cafes there. Were these people coming in a game changer for some of these businesses?
First off, to go off of what I was saying before, some of the changes that I've seen. First of all, I feel a lot of support from the community. We ended up winning. There's a young professionals organization here in Tulsa called Typros, and Tulsa Remote won the Boomtown Awards, which is their highest honor last year, which was a really meaningful thing to me because you can get a lot of national and international exposure, but when your community wants to support your efforts, it's really amazing. We also have a mural here in Tulsa that some private owner painted in honor of our program. It was in memory of a person close to their family, but it also incorporates Tulsa Remote, which is great. As far as the impact to the community, I think that it's palpable for most individuals who live in and around downtown to feel more energy, more excitement. I bet you if you reached out to businesses, they would tell you that they've seen an increase in sales. Apartment complexes definitely have seen increases, and there are multiple groundbreakings happening for new apartments downtown. I think there's more than $1 billion worth of development happening in downtown right now alone. WPX Energy announced their new headquarters, which is a $185 million building right in the heart of the arts district next to the co-working space. I think there'll be 5 restaurants within that. There's just so much happening, and I do think that Tulsa Remote is adding a lot to that because it's not just the individuals that are coming through the program. There are also individuals that have moved to Tulsa purely because they want to be part of the ecosystem that includes Tulsa Remote. At 36 Degrees North, the co-working space is open to anybody who wants to buy a membership. So an individual can come to Tulsa and work remotely, even if they're not part of Tulsa Remote. And we'll do our best to include them in every aspect of it.
And how right now we are like half an hour in, and people are excited and people want to move to Tulsa already. I guess I am excited, but I cannot move because I'm Portuguese, which is sad. But what I wanted to ask is, how is the application process? And the second, of course, how is the selection process? As you receive not millions but thousands of applications, how do you go through all the applications, and how do you select the right people for Tulsa?
That's a great question. Yeah, we've gotten nearly 20,000 applications so far,
Wow.
which is pretty amazing. The application process is fairly straightforward. Our team reviews every single application. There are qualitative and quantitative values in each application that allow us to identify people pretty quickly that would be a good fit for the program. From there, Those applications are ranked, and we then do video interviews with semifinalists that we believe would be a really great fit for the program. We've done well over 1,000 video interviews this year alone already in January and February, which is pretty amazing. If the team member who does the video interview believes that that person would be a really great fit, and they're looking for an individual that's going to provide some value to the community, it can be that they work for a really amazing company and they're looking to hire individuals and want to be part of the community. It can be that they are incredibly impassioned about arts and have a specific aspect that they want to add. It could be that they care a lot about nonprofit issues and want to come to Tulsa and be a part of it. Basically, we're looking for individuals who care just as much or more about what they can give to the community than what they get from it. Once we identify those individuals, we invite them to come visit. And it's not really an interview, it's really just a gut check, because it doesn't make any sense for us to spend resources for a person to move to Tulsa if they're not going to like it, right?
Of course.
So we work with them to schedule a visit for them to come and check out Tulsa and see what it's all about. And it's not a sales pitch either. Because again, if I were to expose them a Tulsa that didn't exist and they move here and they don't like it, there's nothing keeping them from leaving. And it just seems to be a waste of resources. So that's the process. Not everybody gets a visit. Not everybody who visits moves for one reason or another. But that's the basic process, and it's been really successful at identifying people who truly seem to care about building this ecosystem.
Nice. I want to focus a little bit on that first visit. So it's a big city still, and you have a lot of things to show. How does that go? How long is the visit, and what do you focus on when you are showing around the city and when you are talking with the people that may move there?
Well, the belief is when they're visiting here that they are going to move here, right? This is not this isn't a come and check it out and then make up your mind. You've been accepted into this program that you've said that you want to be a part of. And again, we're a foundation, and this money that is being used can be used for other things. And so we're very cautious that this is not just a tourism opportunity. So when they come in, the first thing that they do is they get connected to other participants in the program, because those are the greatest ambassadors to the experience, right? They are coming from all over the country, and they have recently made the move and can answer questions about, honestly answer questions about how it's been. From there, we also do a tour of 36 Degrees North, which is the co-working space, the base camp for entrepreneurship in Tulsa. Then the rest of the day, which is the vast majority of the time, is open to them to go do whatever they want, to explore the city, to go look at apartments, to look at housing. I encourage them to go talk to random strangers and to ask baristas or bartenders what they think of Tulsa and what they think of the program, because I want them to get an honest sense of what's happening here. I don't want them to think that they've been sold something. And then at the end of the day, we have a dinner where we all get together, and they have a chance to get to know me and the team members on my team. And then the next day, we do a tour of Tulsa, which takes about 2 hours. And we go through a lot of the history of Tulsa, both good and bad. We take them through multiple different neighborhoods, showing them commercial and residential. We show them Gathering Place, just a small section of Gathering Place so they can get an idea of what's going on there. And other initiatives that are happening in Tulsa from other foundations like the Lobeck-Taylor Family Foundation. There's a place called Mother Road Market here, which is a restaurant incubator and kitchen, which is just absolutely incredible. And so, again, we spend the vast majority of the time they have completely on their own. But we try to give them a few deep dives into what makes Tulsa Tulsa, so they don't just feel a curated experience, right? They have all aspects of it.
Nice. Would you like to see these kind of programs in more cities and more countries, like spread out your idea into the world pretty much?
There are over 4 million remote workers in the U.S. alone. It depends on what study you review, but a CNBC report late last year reported over 4 million. And I don't want all 4 million moving to Tulsa. As much as I would love to meet each one of those individuals, I don't know if we would be in a great place if that immediately happened, right? I would love to see this trend catch on in other communities. I think Tulsa really does have a head start because there's been so much effort by the city to make this place really, really exciting. And there's authentic, vulnerable conversations happening about equity and in the future of our community here that a lot of other communities couldn't replicate. But if other communities started becoming destinations for remote work, I think that would be great because it's not sustainable that everybody chooses to live in these major cities on the coasts. And at a certain point, the other cities that everybody is picking to move to from those major cities are not going to be sustainable. And Tulsa has an opportunity here. Like I said, history is long and memory is short. Tulsa has an opportunity not just to catch up to other cities, but potentially leapfrog because they've had the opportunity to learn from the mistakes that Austin and Denver and Portland and Nashville unfortunately didn't have an example of to learn from, right? How do we prevent displacement? How do we ensure that as our city continues to grow, that we're considering public transportation and affordable, accessible housing close to downtown, and we're solving for food deserts, and reurbanization is leading towards increased funding for public education, things that the talented workforce really cares about. So I think it's an opportunity for Tulsa to continue to be a leader. And I would love to see other communities join in the efforts and trajectory that we're going.
Nice. I just want to do a left turn because you talk about affordable housing. And as there is more people trying to move into Tulsa, are you not afraid that the real estate prices will just rise out of control?
There's a lot of real estate available in Tulsa.
Nice. That's a good start.
There is a lot of real estate available in Tulsa, and Tulsa is 250 square miles in the city, or something close to that. And there are going to be areas of town that become more expensive.
Of course.
The only way, but Tulsa is going to grow. It's just going to grow. The opportunity is to bring in individuals who care about ensuring that there isn't displacement, so that they are actively voting for policies that prevent that from happening. Because that's really the only way that you can prevent it, is that your city leaders understand that it's an important thing to you, and you want to ensure that that doesn't happen. With that said, I think there's an opportunity for Tulsa Remote. Again, highly diverse people. Many of them are bilingual, coming into communities where they can revitalize neighborhoods instead of gentrify, that they can be representation and help connect a community that has potentially felt not connected. So if we are smart about it, if we're conscientious about it, I believe that where we are at as a city, we can leverage Tulsa Remote to ensure that we're growing in the right direction. Property values will increase, but hopefully we can do it in a way that aids that benefits the current owners and people who could really, really benefit from it. A big goal is to build intergenerational wealth for all citizens of Tulsa and ensure that the growth of the city is good for everyone, not just those that have historically been benefited from growth.
Nice. That's very conscious from you guys. I do see remote work as the biggest opportunity for smaller cities and even rural areas to have a new growing because, like we said before, most of the people move to the big cities because to get the best jobs, to get more money, because there is not many opportunities in the smaller cities. But now we are in a tipping point, as you mentioned, and things are moving. We have a couple of associations like Grow Remote in Ireland and also spreading around the world. I interviewed Shibola SoloWorks in New Mexico also. Shelly Fosse is helping people by re-educating them and helping them to get a remote job so people don't move away from that rural areas in New Mexico. And this is the best way to use remote work and redistribute the population. But still, we see most of the public organizations, most of the governments are not aware at all of these opportunities, which is crazy for me. Look, authorities are completely blind to these opportunities. They keep throwing money to build offices, and they keep throwing money to have more bigger companies move. For example, here in Portugal, it's exactly the same. In your opinion, what are these governments missing, or why are not they jumping into this remote work movement and helping their smaller cities grow with this movement?
what makes working with a foundation like George Kaiser Family Foundation really wonderful is that we're able to take risks. We're able to take the risk and prove a concept that's never been done before. And I don't blame politicians and governments for not wanting to take a risk that's unfounded. What's really exciting is that we have data now that shows how successful this program is. Again, if every community starts replicating it, I don't know how well they're going to be able to do that. It's difficult to provide the amount of support that's needed after the person transitions. So if you are a government and you're just trying to figure out how to incentivize people to move into your community, you better be prepared to provide support to those individuals after they transition. It's more than just getting them to move. It's about getting them connected and I can understand that that's some significant obstacles for a government to focus on. So I think what's really exciting is that GKFF is willing to take a risk and try something out. And if it works, we're going to share it. And if it and I don't even have to say if it doesn't, because it is going to work, because it is working. I mean, I get to finally say, like, it's been an enormous success in every single possible way, from exposing the rest of the world to a city that they potentially had never known about, to attracting incredibly talented people who have blown away all of our expectations in how they've gotten connected and given back to the community, to the economic impacts that a program like this can have on a city. It's all been shown. So what I could potentially see, as you said, we're at a tipping point. I could see that these other communities are now going to catch on after it's been proven and adopt it, which I think is great. And what I think is going to be really important is that each one of those cities be honest about what is really great about their city, and understands what motivates people, right? If you were saying historically people left smaller communities to move to bigger cities because that's where the jobs were. And we're at a tipping point. You're right. Historically, talent went where the jobs were. Now, jobs go where the talent is. And the Amazon HQ2 project that happened a few years ago is a perfect example of that. And if you think about remote work and long term, a large percentage of the workforce being remote, what's going to attract them to a community is going to be the quality of life that they have. And that quality of life is going to be directly connected to the things that they value. And the things that people value, the things that individuals that I know who are part of that talented workforce, what they value is being part of a diverse, inclusive, accepting of all, creative community. And so if rural communities can understand that today and start working on ensuring that they are welcoming of all, accepting of all, and focusing on creative endeavors, I'm really excited to see how the demographics of our country could evolve rapidly over the next 10 to 20 years.
I think exactly the same. And I'll do you a challenge, kind of. I'll ask you for a challenge right now, as I like to challenge people. So I'm from Portugal, and this is a beautiful country where everybody moved seaside. And the government launched a couple of weeks ago a program where they offer €5,000 to anyone moving to the countryside of Portugal if they have a job in the countryside company, which is insane. But let's say it's a good first step. The idea was decent. The implementation was very bad. There is a very interesting smaller cities in Portugal. I'm thinking about Viseu, Braga. You never heard about them, but just trust me on this one. There is amazing smaller cities in Portugal. With super creative. Some have universities, which brings a lot of people. If the Portuguese government would hire you and pay you very well just for advising, we don't want to steal you from Tulsa, but just for some advice in what should they do in the next year to implement properly an action to help people move to smaller cities, like select 5, 6 smaller cities and promote them as remote work friendly, what would be the first step? So what I know it's very demanding, this is a big question, but what advices would you give in the first 3 to 4 months to help the Portuguese government, in this case, try to relocate people in a good way, at least remote workers, because people want to move out from Lisbon and Porto. I met several people that moved to the countryside already without any help or anything related with the government. But if if I think governments will step in sooner or later, and yeah, just was looking for some advice that they could use. Portuguese, Spanish, Italian, Mexican, it doesn't matter. Just what should they look for before launching a program like they did and just offering money for people moving to the countryside?
I love that question. When you said what was the first step, I was going to say deposit the cash into my account, but then you changed it to what's the first piece of advice? So I have to change my answer. I believe that the most important thing is to be authentic. I think it is to take a real look at what you have abundance of that is attractive to people who are potentially already thinking about moving. And then understand the audience very clearly who is thinking about moving. For us, Tulsa potentially suffered from a lack of perception or even a negative perception for certain communities. And our goal with the website was to disrupt those perceptions very quickly. So one of the first things that you see about life in Tulsa is the annual Pride Parade that we have here in downtown Tulsa. We have one of the largest equality centers in the world, and we have the only Pride Street in the region. There is a chance that you would have never expected that in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We talk about the Juneteenth Festival, which is an incredible festival in the historically Black part of Tulsa that has been going on for an extremely long time and is very important to the city's history. That's potentially something that people didn't realize. We have an abundance of food, beverage, coffee, cafes, all these amazing amenities that people potentially wouldn't expect. But most importantly, we gave the perception, let me rephrase that, we potentially destroyed the perception that somebody moving here wouldn't be able to meet other people who are like them. And so what I would probably do with working with the Portuguese government, which I would not be opposed to doing because there are so many talented people in Europe who don't have the legal ability to work in the US. The first thing that I would do is to talk to those communities and identify ways that we can expose how those people moving from the coast could get connected and find other individuals that think and feel the same way that they do so that they wouldn't feel alone. And then also give them pathways for them to affect positive change and continue to push the ball forward. If people feel like they have a purpose in the community, they will focus more on that than trying to compare one city to another. I love Tulsa. The hiking was much better in San Francisco than Tulsa. But that doesn't mean there isn't hiking here. And it doesn't mean that I don't have outlets for that. And it also means that I get to be in a city where I can really push for change that not only affects Tulsa, but look at this. A year and a half in, I'm now speaking to you in Portugal about something that I did in Tulsa, Oklahoma. And there are others that can have that same opportunity within this community.
That is amazing. And I love your answer because it focuses a little bit in the conversation I had before in this podcast with Ignacio from Nomad City. It's exactly first comes the community and also show the best that you have. So when the community wants to attract, let's say, digital nomads, for example, which is very trendy right now, they should think before, what do they have to offer? What's great in my community that I would like to share with people coming from abroad? Is it the food? Is it the great coffee? Is that we are great people and we are a really strong community? Show what we have first. So I loved your answer and I love how focused on the community you are. I think that's really, really, really great and the right way to go. Not just throwing money like we are doing right now, kind of. So to end, I'd like to speak about a crazy vision about the future. So remote work is growing all over the world. It's basically exploding this year in 2020. We have Twitter, we have all the big companies trying to somehow to take advantage of remote work, which is amazing. And people are starting to move out of the big cities and they are super expensive. Silicon Valley has understood that it's not great to have everyone there as prices just rose and it's crazy real estate prices. So the question is, this is all happening in 2020. What is your vision for 2030? Where we will be in these terms of redistribution of population and where we will be working from? what is your vision for 10 years forward?
I love this question, and I want to give true thought to it. I'm going to try to answer it as well as I can without having a lot of time to think about it, because I do spend a lot of time thinking about it. So in 10 years, what do I see? Well, I think that with the changes that are happening within technology companies that are moving to distributed, you're also going to see human resources departments at those tech companies spending enormous resources to ensure that those distributed teams have a sense of belonging, community, and connection. I believe that you will start seeing communities that provide that sense of belonging and community become hubs for tech organizations to recruit, because it is more efficient for them. It is much less expensive for them to have these individuals, and they have far less turnover for them to exist within those communities. And I think that you're going to see these other cities across the country really flourish who focus on that, because what makes a city special to me is, again, an easy quality of life, a high quality of life, an ease of life, access to diversity and opportunity, and that is what remote work kind of allows for. So 10 years from now, I could see a major transition where a large percent of the population is moving to smaller communities that have just as much access as the larger communities, especially when you start talking about the ability to deliver goods and services really quickly with technology advancements. I won't go too futuristic and talk about, the drones that are going to take us from our small communities into the central hub for the show during the day and then back out to our smaller communities. But I really do think that as you look towards the direction that we're going, communities that are actively focused on providing a vibrant and inclusive place that is focused on creative endeavors, I think you'll see those cities flourish like you haven't before.
Nice. That is a great answer. And I agree with everything you just said. This was an outstanding conversation. We are now going towards the end. And first of all, thank you very much for the time, Aaron. It was amazing. I'm super excited to release this conversation. Where can people find out more about you and about Tulsa Remote?
I really enjoyed the conversation as well. Thank you for reaching out to me and spending some time with me today. So people can learn more about Tulsa Remote at tulsaremote.com. You have to be at least 18 years old to be eligible. You have to be work for a company that's based outside of Oklahoma. You can be international as long as you already have the legal ability to work in the United States. We don't work to help you with accessing that legal ability. And applications are still open. So if anybody is interested in applying, they are more than welcome to apply.
Awesome. Do you have any last message to all the listeners?
I would say that as remote workers, focus on finding a place that doesn't only support you, but also celebrates you, because you are pioneers. You are moving this industry forward. We are moving all industries forward and have the potential to be an answer to a lot of the unanswered questions today.
Aaron, again, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I'm so happy right now about your work, about what you are doing in Tulsa, about seeing the future of what you are doing, but also the future and impact of what all the data that you guys are providing and all the testing that you are doing will have all over the world. So again, thank you very much for your time, and I'll make sure I'll leave all the links and everything that's memorable in the show notes. Again, thank you.
Thank you so much.
And that's a wrap. I hope that you enjoyed this incredible interview with Aaron. I had a lot of fun and learned a lot from him. If you enjoyed this podcast, share it with one friend and help us reach more people who are interested in remote work. It means the world to us, and you are helping us spread the word about this amazing movement. What is your favorite episode so far? What have you learned in the past with this podcast? I would love to know everything. So please reach out to me at gonzo@remoteworkmovement.com. That's GONZO at remoteworkmovement.com and tell me everything about your experience. See you in the next week with a new episode of the Remote Work Movement podcast. Stay safe.